Hello, hello! Welcome everyone. My name is Allie and I am here today to bring you your monthly forecast for the month of November. Now, for this month, I have drawn 3 cards from the Legend Arthurian Tarot and 1 card from the Good Tarot to kind of summarize it and give us an affirmation for the month of November. For those who follow me and know that I'm really into fairies and mythology. And the more I study fairies and mythology, the more references I see to King Arthur. This is a deck that I have had for many, many years, but I have never really used it. It's one of those decks that's been hiding in the back of my collection, buried underneath all my other decks. But when I discovered I had it, I knew I needed to learn more because Arthur was coming up over and over and over again, and I just felt like this need to learn more and know more about him and his legends, because I always thought that the story of King Arthur was just one story, like the story of Cinderella, but it's really not. It's actually this huge anthology of mythos surrounding this legendary man who, if my studies are correct, historians believe was a real person, maybe a king, more likely a military leader, but regardless, he must have been a really popular guy because we're still talking about him today. The stories have lasted through centuries. He's just had a huge influence on Celtic and British history and folklore. So I'm totally fascinated with everything about the Arthurian legends and how influential fairies actually were. They came from these stories of Arthur and his knights and his legend. So I find it's just super fascinating. That's just me geeking out right now. So let's get started with the reading. Now, I pulled some cards, and I'm sensing that I hope I can get it across properly, because I feel like November is going to be, I want to say heavy, but I feel like people are going to be put off by that word when I say it's going to be a heavy month. But I feel like it is going to be very, maybe transformational is a better word. It's bigger than your kind of day-to-day stuff, like bigger decisions. More importance is put on the things that I'm going to describe in these cards. So I think what I'm going to do first is just describe the characters that show up in these cards and then put them together and tell the story, and that hopefully, if I do it right, we'll get a forecast for the month of November. So the first card I pulled, if I can get rid of the glare, is the Horned One, and he's represented here by Cernunnos. Cernunnos, the Horned One, is a nickname for the god Cernunnos. Cernunnos is a Celtic god. I'm not sure if he shows up in how much he shows up in Arthurian legend. My understanding of Cernunnos is that there's very little actually written about him or stories told about him, but he shows up in kind of images and like on pottery and things like that. He's shown up and it's understood who he is, but there's very little known about him. But he's become way more popular in modern times, and he's represented today as a deity. He's called the Horned One because he's always depicted with stag antlers. He's a very wild god. He represents nature, fertility. He's the very masculine side of fertility, that bringer of life, the spark that ignites life. He's a very virile character, strength and passion, and almost like very getting down to nature, very wild, like just letting loose and having fun and kind of like getting down and dirty with nature, if that makes sense. He's a wild god. He represents our wild side, our wild nature, our ability to procreate, and almost like sinful indulgences is what he represents. So because in the traditional tarot deck, this card would be the Devil card. And don't get me started on all the controversy between his Cernunnos, the devil. I'm not even going to go there, but I like how he plays out in this card. So how I'm interpreting this is a character that represents our wild side, our more animalistic, our nature side, our temptations to be more aggressive or more sexual or sensual, to seek out pleasure. That's what is represented in this card for the month of November. So I'm just going to leave it there for now. We'll come back to him after. The next card I drew is an interesting contrast. Again, a very masculine character. Here we have the Emperor, represented by King Arthur himself. So here we have a king. So with Cernunnos was the very more nature, wild, letting loose, anything goes kind of side, whereas here we have a more civilized, a more subdued character. Someone who has the burden of responsibility, the weight of having to look after others. He has an entire kingdom that he has to make decisions for. So he has the weight of duty and responsibility. So there has to be rules. There has to be order. There has to be, people have to pull their weight, and there has to be some kind of organization here. It's not just all fun and chaos. It's structure and order and rules. And there may be some tough choices and tough consequences as a result, and all that falls on Arthur's shoulders as the king, as the emperor, as the leader or ruler of Camelot. Whereas Cernunnos came up as our anchor or our past card, or things that were coming in from the past that will play out as an asset in the present. This one's warning us of an obstacle or a challenge this month. So a challenge with authority, or a challenge with having to be in the position of authority or responsibility. So if your desire is to play, but you're weighed down with the burden of responsibility, of duty, of, an effect on other people, there may be guilt, because Cernunnos would be more sort of our selfish nature, our pleasure seeking, do what feels good and what feels right, or what's fun to us, and to the hell with consequences, but that might have effect on other people. And with this card tells us, I feel strongly that this card is saying that there's more than just us that are affected, and there's this weight of responsibility. So I feel like with this month, we're gonna feel a lot more responsibilities on our shoulders this month, a lot more, maybe some difficult choices for some people, but it could also be dealing with authority, that maybe you're at a breaking point this month where some big major decisions have to be made, and you have to really decide what's more important, your happiness or what are your other options. And that might be really, really difficult for some people, because if you say, just for example, your boss was a total tyrant and that's why this card is coming up, and it's too rigid and it's too strict and there's no autonomy, and you're just completely fed up, and it's affecting your ability to have fun and to play and be happy. Maybe it's time to make that tough choice, but that maybe you have a family that depends on your income, so there are some really I feel like there's going to be some tough choices to make, and the Emperor is coming up as an obstacle. And so just a little bit of background about King Arthur himself. He as I said, he's got this amazing reputation that stories are still being told about him centuries later. They started in the Middle Ages, and we're still talking about them as one of the greatest stories ever told. And he was known not only for his courage and his bravery and his military might and his military skills and his warrior skills, but also as a leader. He was charismatic, and he was caring, and he was merciful, and he was funny. He had a good sense of humor. He was very charming and charismatic, but he could make really tough decisions when called upon, and that's why people respected him so much. So yeah, this is our challenger card for the month of November. Now, this is what ties it all together, because we had these two obstacles, these two conflicting kind of personalities or aspects of human nature coming out, the one that wants to be more wild versus the one that wants to do the right thing and think of others and be more civilized and subdued. The third card I pulled is the Justice card. So another kind of heavy card. It's not my favorite word, but I don't know what else to say. We have Justice represented here by the Lady of the Lake. Now, the Lady of the Lake was, she was like a spirit or a fairy that bestowed the magical sword Excalibur to King Arthur. She gave him the magic legendary sword. And as she rises out of the lake to give him the sword, Excalibur, she tells him that the reason she's giving him this gift is because she believes that he is the one who will restore peace and harmony in the realm, that he's the one who can do it. And that's what justice is. And I think a lot of us, including myself, forget that at times, that we think of justice, there's this very fine line between justice and revenge, that we think someone did something wrong to us or hurt us, so therefore we want to see harm done to them. We want revenge. We might say we want justice, but when we want it in that sense or that regard, that's revenge. That's not justice. Justice is a system, ideally. I'm not saying that our justice system is perfect, but in an ideal sense, justice is there to restore harmony to society, to keep the people feeling safe and at peace with each other, so that they're not killing each other or harming each other or stealing from each other. There is peace and harmony in the land. And so that is why the Lady of the Lake gave Arthur the sword, was because she felt that he was the one to do it. Now, justice is also about balance, and I feel like that is one of our important actions to take this month, is to seek out balance, especially where these first two cards come in, because we have very conflicting thoughts, urges, beliefs, feelings. All of that plays into these cards. We have the side of us that wants to do the right thing, that wants to be civilized and responsible, but then we also have these urges or these needs to play and have fun and let loose, and they're kind of at odds with each other this month in a really big way. Justice is reminding us that it's really important to maintain balance, that if we're feeling the weight of responsibility increasing, then in order to maintain balance, we need to balance that out with an equal amount of play and fun and pleasure. The other thing I wanted to mention about justice is that it's also about fairness. So I feel like through the month of November, we need to remember to seek out fairness. So when we're making decisions that affect others, we need to be able to collect all the information. We need all the input. We really need to truly know how it's going to impact the people around us before we step up as leaders and make the final decision. I feel like it's also about accepting fairness, that there may be this temptation because of the challenges ahead to say that's not fair or life's not fair. And in many cases, it's not. Like, there are things and tragedies and horrible things that happen that are outside of our control, and I would no way want to ever make anyone feel that those things happened because of any fault of your own. That would be unfair. But if we can look at how our actions have consequences, and maybe it was actions we took in the past that are now catching up with us, we have to look at that as fair and look at it as restoring harmony to ourselves, our well-being, the well-being of others. Really look, before you are tempted to say the words, "That's not fair," really check in with yourself first and see if there was something in your behavior that caused that or led to that that effect or that consequences, because that's what justice is, reminding us of actions have consequences. So I hope that made sense. Now, lastly, I just want to talk about this card. This was from the Good Tarot. I have drawn the Page of Water for the month of November, and I'm just going to read from the book. So let me hold the card up while I read. I open my heart fully, allowing myself to feel childlike wonder and innocence. All adventures lead me where I need to go. Love awaits. Life is a delightful dance, and I am here to frolic and play. I am ready with a big smile, and I have my dancing shoes on. Okay, so I'll just show you her a little closer. She's this little child mermaid. And I think what this card is reminding us of is that need to play. So again, we have another interesting contrast of characters here, with the kind of this card being the childlike innocence and the playful spirit, whereas this one is more kind of for adults, the more sinful indulgences. But both of these cards are really emphasizing that need for play and that need for pleasure and for just having fun and letting loose and being open without the restrictions and the guilt and all the things that sometimes come along with doing that. So there you have it. That is your monthly forecast for November. I hope you guys have an amazing month. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay shiny and keep sparkling. Bye, guys.